Deus Volt, Infidels. Welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob, and today we're going to be talking about Paladins. Paladins are one of my favorite classes in Dungeons & Dragons. They're very thematic to play. We've all thought about things like Arthur and the Knights of the Holy Grail, or maybe Roland from the Dark Tower books, leading his quartet towards a goal bigger than himself. Maybe it's just Captain America inspiring his allies from the front of the battlefield while also dishing out some righteous vengeance. But no matter what it is, Paladins have always been kind of this cool thematic class, and they're always a lot of fun to play. However, Paladins aren't always fun to have someone else in your group play, and that's because Paladins have earned the reputation of not just being lawful good, but also lawful stupid. Let's face it, we've probably all had groups where someone came up with a brilliant plan to avoid most of the party's current trouble, or maybe to accomplish their goals by the easiest and most direct method, maybe something a little underhanded and shady. And then just when everyone was locked in and thought that this was the greatest plan ever, that guy at the table playing the paladin was like, guys, I don't think my character would do that. Then you had a 30-minute argument with this player before everyone finally relented that, okay, fine, we'll do it the paladin's way. You then proceeded to accomplish your goals by the most painful, difficult, boring, and frustrating method imaginable, because that's what paladins do. That's not necessarily a lot of fun. Now, over time, paladins have been unshackled from the idea that they had to be lawful good. This started in 4th edition, when the game came out. People saw that paladins didn't have to be lawful good anymore. But fortunately, we righteous warriors in Heaven's cause saw that this was an abomination and a tool of the devil to unshackle us from our path of righteous goodness. And so players around the world rejected 4th edition as the hideous abomination that it was. But then when the heavens parted and God himself handed us 5th edition in its divine perfection, we saw that paladins didn't have to be lawful good, and everyone rejoiced around the world because now paladins could have way more options, and we could all embrace that evil paladin Death Knight style guy that secretly we all wanted to play at some point. So that's enough of the history lesson. That brings us up to today. Paladins no longer have to be lawful good. They no longer even have to be followers of a particular religion, in fact. I mean, you could theoretically have an atheist paladin. Paladins don't have to be connected to a god or a religion or an alignment. Instead, they draw their power from an oath. And this oath will give you certain tenets you have to follow. If you fail to follow them, you can become an oath breaker or just lose all your abilities, up to the DM. Either way, it's no longer about religion or even necessarily about the alignment. It's about the oath. And as I said, you can be an evil paladin now. So let's go over the paladin core abilities. I'm not going to go into each subclass in any detail. This is going to be more an overview of the paladin, and then we'll make future videos where we break down all the subclasses in probably painful detail. But anyways, so at level 1, you're obviously going to be able to start with any armor you want and a shield if you so desire. You'll also have martial weapon proficiency, which is going to be amazing because that's going to put you right in there with any of the other top frontliners in the game, basically equal to fighter as far as that kind of thing goes. You're going to have divine sense, which allows you to detect the presence of fey, undead, fiends, and celestials within 60 feet of you. It will tell you what category of it is, so like a fiend or an undead, but it won't tell you what type. So you might sense an undead within 60 feet, you'll know it's an undead, but you won't know if it's a skeleton or if it's a lich. Which, let's be honest, that might be an important difference to know. The power level between those two is, a little big. You're also going to get lay hands, which has been a staple of the paladin forever. The way it works in 5th edition is you're going to get a hit point pool equal to 5 times your paladin level, which you can use to heal yourself or others. You can also use it to cure poisons or disease at the cost of 5 hit points from the pool for a poison or a disease. So, for example, if you had a teammate who is both poisoned and diseased, because he is an idiot apparently, then you would be able to spend 10 hit points from your pool to cure both of those conditions. If you'd also lost 30 hit points in the process, and you wanted to top him up, you would need to then use 30 more hit points from your pool to heal him back to full. You're also going to get, at level 2, a fighting style. Now, you don't have the full range of fighting styles available to fighters. Basically, you only have 4, 2 defensive ones, 2 offensive ones. You're going to get Duelist to up your one-handed melee damage. You can take Great Weapon Fighting to add your two-handed weapon damage. And then on the defensive side, you can either take the defensive fighting style to boost your armor class, or protection to help you protect someone else. Pretty solid choices all around, and you'll probably be able to pick one of the 4 that you like. You don't get access to 2 weapon fighting or archery, both unfortunate, because they're both pretty decent, especially archery. But, it is what it is. You're also going to get the ability to cast spells starting at 2nd level. And this is awesome because you can then use those spells for smites, which you will also get at 2nd level. Now, I'm not saying you can't cast spells, obviously. I'm just saying you never will, because no paladin in the history of 5th edition has actually cast a single spell. Fact. It is known, Khaleesi. You just use them all for smites instead. And I know some of you are thinking, like, well, I'm looking forward to taking Find Steed. But then you realize you could just use that 2nd level spell slot to smite the local stable boy and steal a Steed, because you're not a lawful good paladin anymore. You're an Oath of Vengeance paladin, and now you can do that kind of thing. Sure, you could have cast a spell, but wouldn't you rather just smite someone? That's why you chose paladin. Bringing righteous, or in this case unrighteous, vengeance to the infidels and the heathens alike. At level 3, you're going to get to choose your oath. And the oath will give you another aura, and it'll give you class-specific spells, or oath-specific spells, I guess. And a lot of those are pretty good. I'm not going to break them all down. We'll do future videos talking about each oath specifically, and we can go into them in more detail. At level 5, you get extra attack. At level 6, you get Aura of Protection, one of the most defining paladin abilities in the game. You get to add your charisma bonus to all of your saving throws, and anyone within 10 feet of you gets to do the same, any allies within 10 feet. At level 18, this becomes a 30-foot aura. It's awesome. What can I say? Not much more needed to say. It even helps on concentration checks for your allies, not yourself, because you won't be concentrating on anything because you will be smiting with those spell slots. But still, it's nice for them to have. At level 10, you're going to get Aura of Courage, making yourself and allies immune to charm spells, just further increasing the number of things that you don't have to worry about in the game. Oh, I forgot, you're also going to become immune to disease at level 3. I wouldn't say it's a great ability, but it is kind of thematic, you don't have time for the common cold when there are heathens for you to be killing. So, righteousness doesn't take a day off just because you've got a bit of a chest cold. At level 11, you're going to get the improved Divine Smite. This will add an extra D8 damage, radiant damage, to all of your attacks. It's not quite as good as a fighter getting a level or an extra attack at this level, but it at least helps you to remain competitive. The thing with paladins is, compared to say like fighters and rangers, your round-to-round damage doesn't really keep up with them as you start to level up. But that's why you have smites, because your burst damage is insane. And when you need to burn hard and bring the hurt, nobody does it like a paladin. Well, very few people anyways. But like I said, your average sustained damage, unless you're just dropping smite spells and using a lot of resources all the time, isn't going to really keep up. But improved Divine Smite helps you to at least remain competitive and stay in the ballgame. At level 14, you're going to get Cleansing Touch, which will allow you to use your action to remove a harmful effect from any of your allies. I wouldn't say it's great, because a lot of these effects, if they allow a saving throw, they'll give it to you every round, so your ally might be able to overcome it anyways, but sometimes you just really need to overcome something right away, and, when that happens, you've got Cleansing Touch. It's not a terrible ability. I wouldn't say it's a great ability. It's just kind of in the middle somewhere. So those are the overall abilities. I will touch briefly on the different auras from the different oaths. I might as well just at least mention that. Oath of Devotion is going to give you Aura of Devotion, making you and nearby allies immune to charm. Definitely not a bad, or immune to fear, sorry, not a bad thing at all. Oath of Redemption is going to allow you to take damage instead of your ally, and the Oath of the Crown has something similar as well. Both will allow you to use your reaction to take damage that would have gone to an ally. However, you can't reduce that damage by any way. So if you had, let's say, heavy armor mastery, that's not going to help you. If you were a Dragonborn and your ally next to you took fire damage and you're gold Dragonborn, so you're resistant, it doesn't matter. Basically, you take the damage that he took instead of him taking it. But by that same token, I believe that if they can reduce the damage, it should apply to you because you're just taking the damage that they took. So if they got a saving throw and they made it for half, you should only take that damage. If your ally was a Dragonborn, or say it was a wizard or a sorcerer, and you used absorb elements to cut the damage in half, then you should only take the damage that they took. It's very thematic, and if you really want to play that like protector, guardian of his allies style play, then both of those oaths are pretty good picks. Very, very strong defensively, and you know, your allies will love it when they don't end up taking a bunch of damage and you do instead. Oath of the Ancients has one of the best auras in the game. You're going to take half damage from all enemy savings, or from all enemy spells, and so will allies within the aura. And it's worth noting that most damaging spells, or at least a lot of them, give you a saving throw for half damage on top of that. So if you make the saving throw, which shouldn't be so hard given that you've got your aura of protection as well, adding a charisma bonus to your save, then you'll take a quarter damage from most spells. And even if you fail, you're still looking at half. It's an amazing ability, definitely probably one of the best like Oath specific auras, and really the main reason to choose Oath of the Ancients. Other than maybe roleplay reasons, of course. Oath of Vengeance doesn't really give you an aura. It's more, if you hit somebody with an opportunity attack, you can then move up to half your distance without provoking opportunity attacks in kind. It's pretty decent because it allows you a lot of mobility around the battlefield, and paladins aren't exactly known for being, fast, mobile, skirmishing types. It does require you to hit with opportunity attacks, so unless you're getting in a lot of opportunity attacks, it might not activate very often. And that's the nice thing about the auras. They're just kind of always there. And sure, maybe you're not taking spell damage, and your Oath of the Ancients Paladin didn't get to do anything this round. But spell damage is pretty common, and you will get hit with it a lot, and so it's going to activate a lot. If you get a lot of opportunity attacks, this is a great ability, but if you don't, it's, just not really doing much of anything for you. Oath of Conquest, any enemies that are frightened of you, instead of trying to flee, their movement is reduced to 0, and they take psychic damage equal to half your paladin level at the beginning of their turn. Because Oath of Conquest paladins can get access to things like fear, and because all paladins have access to things like Wrathful Smite, it could be pretty decent. You can make a character who becomes more of a control-oriented paladin, where you start locking down enemies with like fear spells, but now they don't run because they're stuck in your aura, and they're just taking damage every round. It can be pretty decent. It's also worth noting that if somebody gets knocked down prone in your aura while being frightened of you, they can't actually get up because it requires half their movement to do so, and their movement is reduced to 0. So they're just stuck there on the ground being prone. Definitely worth noting. So that covers all the different oaths. Let's get into some of the different races you might want to pick. Obviously, any race that gives you a lot of strength and charisma is going to be a solid choice. And, it's hard to go wrong with things like Variant Human. Half-Elf is always great for these kind of choices. Dragonborns are exceptionally strong paladins. Mountain Dwarf, despite not getting charisma, they do get con, and they're pretty solid as well. The Hill Dwarf is decent as well, giving you an extra hit point per level, which could be really good if you're planning on playing, say, like an Oath of Redemption, and you want to be taking in a lot of the allies' damage to yourself. Then having more hit points is, of course, going to be a huge boost for something like that. Beyond the player's handbook options, Duergar are pretty good, just don't fight in direct sunlight, obviously. The Trident, the Aasimar are both pretty decent. And even Tieflings, especially if you start using some of the Mordenkainen's variant Tiefling races, some of them can be quite strong. But just having 2 to your Charisma is already a pretty good start. But Zoriel, for example, and Levistus, both are strong. Zoriel giving you a +1 strength, Levistus +1 to your con. So that's basically it for races. But honestly, any race you want to play, if you want to play a half-orc, half-orcs are a great choice as well. Goliath, pretty good choice as well. Just, play whatever you think is going to be fun. Don't say, oh, well, he said that Mountain Dwarf was going to be better than half-orc, so I'm not going to go half-orc. The truth is that whatever you want to play is probably what you're going to have the most fun enjoying, and that's going to be the most important thing. So let's go through some of the feats really quick. Obviously, if you're going to be using a Great Weapon Mastery is a solid choice. I really like Polearm Mastery. We'll discuss an actual build in a few minutes, which is just basically built around using Polearm Mastery. It's awesome. And if you start using polearms, obviously things like Sentinel become strong options as well. Warcaster, if you want to be actually maintaining concentration on spells, despite all my jokes about never casting and only smiting, there will be times you want to cast it and concentrate on spells, even if those are just smite spells. And so Warcaster is great, so is Resilient Con. Because of your Aura of Protection and your bonus to saving throws, you might not really need them as much as, say, like a War Cleric or somebody would, but they're both pretty solid. And the thing is that with either Resilient Con or Warcaster combined with your Aura, you are almost never going to lose concentration on an important spell. Let's see what else do I have written down here. Lucky, of course, as I've mentioned before, when in doubt, Lucky is strongly to be considered. If you're going to play with like a tanky type guy, a lot of times your armor class will be so high that you might only be getting hit on like a 16 plus type of thing, which means that a lot of times you do get hit, they're going to be crits. If you can only be hit on a 19 or 20, half the times you get hit, it was a crit. And being able to force the Dungeon Master to re-roll the attack is going to reduce the amount of damage you take even more. Plus, sometimes you just need to make a key saving throw, and even with Aura of Protection, you might have just rolled a 1, and that's just all there is to it. Lucky can help you out. I don't really like Lucky on Paladins as an offensive tool. I wouldn't use it to I missed an attack, I'm going to use Lucky. Unless the enemy was on their final legs and everybody knew that this thing was about dead, and they were counting on you to land that final hit and maybe getting a solid smite that would finish them off, then, obviously that's going to be a different circumstance. But as a general rule, I prefer to use Lucky on Paladins as a defensive tool. Heavy Armor Mastery is a pretty solid choice as well if you plan on playing like a tanky, heavy armor Paladin. It's especially good in like the damage reduction role with, say, like Oath of Redemption or an Oath of the Crown Paladin. And I also really like Infernal Constitution if you're a Tiefling, giving yourself resistance to a third different type of element can be pretty handy. You're going to start with fire, this is going to give you a couple more, and now you're starting to get to the point where, especially combined with high armor, you start adding in a bunch of resistances to different damage types, and you start becoming pretty much immune to almost anything. So for different spells, I'm just going to go through some of my favorites for each spell level. Starting at level 1, you've got Bless, adding a d4 to your attack and saving throws, as well as a couple of your allies. Bless is an amazing buff. The only downside is it requires your action, but it's pretty awesome. It does require concentration, but the bonus to your saving throws is also going to apply to your concentration save. Bless is available to other classes as well, so if you've got a cleric who's going to be casting it a lot, you might want to look at like Divine Favor to boost your damage instead. But between those two, I generally prefer Bless. If all else in a vacuum, I feel like Bless is just a better spell. Compelled Duel is pretty nice, forcing somebody to attack you. If they try to attack others, then they get disadvantage against them. Again, a very tanky, defensive type ability to try to force your enemy to concentrate his damage onto you, and then you're going to use, your high armor and probably a shield to just ignore most of his attacks completely. Heroism is going to be pretty nice, especially I like Heroism combined with things like Heavy Armor Mastery. Heroism is going to give you your casting bonus in temporary hit points every round, as well as but it's temporary hit points. So remember, temporary hit points do not stack. So let's say you had 16 charisma, you're going to get 3 temporary hit points at the beginning of each of those rounds. And if you don't take the damage the round before, those temporary hit points just disappear, and you get your new ones if you want to, right? You could choose to keep the other ones, but it doesn't really matter. You've got 3 temporary hit points, but it's renewing every round. And then combined with something like Heavy Armor Mastery, where you can reduce damage from hits by 3. Now you've got 3 temporary hit points and a damage reduction of 3. And even if you get hit for like 8 or 9 damage, you're looking at like 2 or 3 points of damage that are actually getting through. It can be a real difference maker, especially in a longer fight, and especially against like hordes of kobolds and goblins and stuff like that, who aren't hitting hard, but there might be a lot of them attacking. Shield of Faith is pretty good as well. I kind of have, if you're playing a tanky type paladin, Shield of Faith is awesome. If you're more focused on dealing lots of damage, Shield of Faith isn't one I'd probably prioritize, but I'd still probably take it anyways. It bonus action to cast, +2 to your armor class, does require concentration, but it's pretty awesome. As far as the offensive ones, I mentioned Divine Favor, adding a D4 radiant damage to your attacks. It's okay in a longer fight. That damage will add up, especially if you have 2 or more attacks around. Then it starts being pretty good. You also have Thunderous Smite, which is going to add some thunder damage, which is very rarely resisted, and it will also give your attack a knockback and will make the target prone. 10-foot knockback and knock them prone. So if you're near ledges or on a bridge or something, Thunder Smite can be excellent. It's only a bonus action to cast, but does require concentration. You also have Wrathful Smite, which is only doing a D6 extra damage, but will include the Frighten effect on your target should they fail a saving throw. I'm not a huge fan of the Smite spells in general, to be honest, because they require concentration, and it's a resource you had to use up front. So if you look at a Smite spell versus just using that spell slot for a Smite, you're going to cast your spell, which used your bonus action, and then if you miss, you're still having to concentrate on it, and that spell slot is gone. So you could get hit, lose concentration, and that spell slot did nothing. But if you're using that spell slot for a Smite, you only have to expend that slot after you've seen if it was a hit or not. So if, in that same circumstance, if I attack and miss, I don't have to use the spell slot. So there's no resource cost there other than just my attack, which missed anyways. And that was the same in both circumstances. So they can be nice, and it's worth noting that if you have a lot of spell slots, you can do both. You could cast, say, Thunderous Smite as your bonus action, attack, hit with that attack, do extra damage, drop a Smite on top of that, and if you're 11 plus, you'll also get your improved Divine Smite damage on top of that, plus all the weapon damage. So this is where I say Paladins can really, really, really burn hard compared to a lot of other classes. But you have to spend a lot of resources to do so. Anyways, on to level 2. My favorite level 2 spell for the Paladin is Find Steed. Now, the rules around Steeds are kind of weird and confusing. If you're riding, let's say you use your Find Steed and you make a warhorse, for example. The warhorse could be controlled or uncontrolled, but if it's uncontrolled, it has its own initiative and it can attack. That's really the big bonus there. But because it has its own initiative, it can make it really difficult for you to try to do something on your round. Let's say you roll an 18 for your initiative and your warhorse rolls a 3. You might be stuck holding your action until the horse can move to get you into combat. That's really not ideal at all. If it's a controlled mount, you act together and it will act on your initiative. So now it can use its movement, get you into combat, and you can attack. The horse could even use the disengage action and get you back out of the combat, or the dodge action once it's already in there, making it harder to hit. It's just usually better to have a controlled mount, but it means that it's not going to do damage. And when you find greater Steed, you can start getting things like Griffins and Pegasi and stuff, and there might be circumstances where you want them to be able to attack. So just, keep that in mind. The main attraction of Fine Steed, though, is that any spell that only targets you will also affect them. So things like Bless, if you cast it on yourself, won't affect your Steed because it targets other allies. But something like Death Ward, for example, will affect you and your Steed at the same time, assuming you're riding it, of course, which means that you can start getting some pretty good action economy out of these spells. You can cast Armor of Agathis if you have it available, like say you're an Oath of Conquest Paladin, and now your horse has Armor of Agathis as well. Like I said, Death Ward's a pretty good one. Heck, even the Smite spells, as ridiculous as that is, if you decide to let your horse attack independently and you cast Thunderous Smite on yourself, your horse will now have Thunderous Smite on it. So there are some pretty good potential for combinations there. Things like Misty Step, if you're Oath of the Ancients or Oath of Vengeance, both have that in their spell list. And now your horse can just teleport too, coming along with you, which is obviously preferable. You don't want to leave it behind. Fine Steed adds a lot of mobility, and it's also a celestial or a fiend, meaning that it's not just a warhorse. It has the stats of a warhorse, but it has higher intelligence too, which is pretty good. Lesser Restoration is one that you don't necessarily need if somebody else has it, but maybe nobody else took it, in which case you probably do need it. Lesser Restoration is one of those spells that you don't need it very often, but when you need it, you kind of gotta have it. Aid, gonna give +5 hit points and max hit points to yourself and party members. At level 3, that'll go up to +10 if you decide to cast it with a 3rd level spell slot. It's kind of nice because it's not temporary hit points. It's increasing your current and max hit points instead. So you could actually combine it with things like Heroism. This lasts 8 hours, so it's a pretty lengthy buff. An extra 5 hit points isn't groundbreaking, but it's not nothing either. And like I said, if you start, boosting it with higher level spell slots, an extra 10 or 15 hit points to your max and current hit point totals can be pretty good. It also, because it isn't temporary hit points, could work with something like Inspirational Leader as well, so it's not going to conflict with that or interfere at all. 3rd level spells, my favorite one is Aura of Vitality. The most important one is Revivify. But Aura of Vitality is going to give you 2d6 healing as a bonus action. It lasts a minute, and on your bonus action every round, you can give those 2d6 of healing to yourself or to one of your allies. I actually prefer this spell out of combat, because if you think about it, over the course of the 1 minute that it lasts, that is 20 die 6 worth of healing. That is a lot of healing for a 3rd level spell slot. Now, sure, it may be not as good as, say, like Healing Spirits, where people cast in an area and then form a conga line where they run in and out of the circle over and over again to try to heal themselves, and other similar shenanigans. But it is pretty good. And the fact that you can use it in combat or out of combat makes it a lot more flexible. If you compare it to, say, like the cleric spell Prayer of Healing, which, to be fair, is only a 2nd level spell, not a 3rd, but this heals way more, and it doesn't take 10 minutes to cast. It's a much better out of combat heal, and it's a pretty good in combat heal. The only thing to be aware of is it requires concentration, and so, if you're going to be trying to get off 20 die 6 healing while in combat, it's going to have to last a long time, and you're going to have to make a lot of concentration saving throws. Still, it's an excellent spell. It's one that I usually pick up on bards with a magical secret. That's how good I think it is if I'm playing a lore bard. But, and then you get it sooner too. You can get it at level 6 instead of level 9. Go figure. Freaking bards. But anyways, excellent spell. Revivify. Revivify is one of the best raised dead spells in the game, honestly, because you can get it at such a low level. Obviously, it's not as good as like Resurrection or True Resurrection, but there's not a hefty material component cost like those other ones where you're spending, 25 grand for one heal, or for one res, I should say. It is only a level 3 spell slot as well. Now, granted, the target has to be dead for less than a minute, but a lot of times that's all you need. If a teammate dies in the middle of the fight, you can probably even finish the fight and then bring them up and not even have to use your action. It's pretty good. And when you need to res someone, you need to res someone. It's just that simple. I also like Crusader's Mantle. Crusader's Mantle really shines in a group with a lot of other melee guys. If you're basically up front and you're the tank and maybe you got like a rogue or someone with you, Crusader's Mantle isn't going to be very good. If you have, say, a wizard using like necromancy, like maybe Animate Dead, or he's using a lot of summons and conjurations, or a druid conjuring a lot of things, or if you just cast animate objects on a ton of coins, then all those allies are going to get an extra d4 damage added to their hits. Basically, it's just like an AoE version of Divine Favor. So, under the right circumstances, it can be amazing. Under other circumstances, it's really just you getting the benefit. Why are you using a 3rd level spell slot to cast Divine Favor, essentially, right? It's not going to be very handy. But I like pointing it out because under the right party composition, it's an amazing spell. 4th level, Death Ward's pretty sweet. Going to last 8 hours. If you get reduced down to 0 or less, instead you're going to stay at 1. You could have gotten this from, like, say, being a half orc or something. But if you're not a half orc, then Death Ward is pretty good. The reason I like it is because, as I already mentioned, you can combine it with, say, a magical steed, and then you both get Death Ward. This is especially good on, say, a fine greater steed, because if you're flying around on a Pegasus and you're 400 feet in the air and your Pegasus dies, that can be an issue. But instead, if your Pegasus goes down to 1 and now you can try to lay hands this thing and keep it up in the air and not plummet to your death, then it becomes quite awesome. And the fact that you can hit both of you with one spell slot is pretty good. Of course, why are you flying a Pegasus when you could have had a Griffin? But, maybe it was a thematic choice. Maybe. It's possible, I guess. Another one is Banishment. I have problems with Banishment. Anytime it's a all or nothing single target with a saving throw, it can be kind of circumstantial at the best of time. And unlike, say, like a sorcerer or like a diviner wizard, sorcerer can give somebody disadvantage with heightened spell. The diviner 1 for your saving throw. Congratulations, you're banished. You don't really have that. And you might not have maxed your charisma, meaning that your casting stat might not be keeping up with full casters. So it could be hard for you to land banish. But that being said, Paladins are kind of weak in the area of crowd control, so kind of, take what you can get again. It's not the best spell in the game, but it's not terrible either. And like I said, you don't have a ton of real options here, so, you might as well take it. 5th level, Banishing Smite. Again, I have mixed feelings on this one. If you reduce the target down to 50 hit points or less, it can be banished, basically like a banishment, except with a smite. And it's doing extra damage on top of it, just like any of your smite spells. The problem is, if you're fighting somebody really powerful, like, by the time you've got 4th or 5th level spell, it's just 17th level. So anything you're fighting at this level could have 2 or 3 or 400 hit points. So by the time he's down to 50, the fight's almost over. And banishing him might just make all your allies mad, because they're like, what the heck, and now you just banish the enemy. And they probably want to just kill the guy instead, and he's almost done. So, not great. Also, you might not know how many hit points he had. Maybe he had 70 hit points left, and now you just, he did a bit of extra damage, but you could have just used that spell slot on a smite and done way more damage. So, again, not great. But Let's say you're fighting a really powerful enemy and he's got a bunch of other lesser minions and guards and whatnot. Now Banishing Smite can be pretty good because you can do a bunch of damage to one of his minions, get the guy out of there, and get to the main guy that much faster. You're just reducing the amount of things attacking you and your allies, and you're able to attack the boss much quicker. So it can be good. It's definitely circumstantial. Bear it in mind. Destructive Wave, it's going to do 10 dice 6 damage. It's an AoE centered on you, I believe. Or does it shoot out from you? I can't remember. I should have looked it up before I did this video, but whatever. 10 dice 6 damage, but it doesn't have friendly fire, and it can knock things prone. The damage by level 17, 10 dice 6 damage isn't groundbreaking by any means, but the fact that it doesn't have friendly fire is kind of nice. And again, Paladins just don't have a lot of big AoE damage. You have great single target damage. Paladins excel at burning down one powerful enemy. But as for dealing with, everything else, you're not so good. And so this is going to be at least give you an option of being able to do that somewhat. So I think it's at least worth looking at. You've also got Holy Weapon. It's going to add 2d8 damage to your weapon, and every time you hit, it's going to do that damage. It lasts an hour, which is why I like the spell. So over the course of that hour, you can have multiple fights, and that damage is just being added round after round after round after round. It's pretty good, especially considering that if you just use that spell Smite with, you're looking at 5d8 damage. You can make that up in less than 2 rounds, even less than 1 if you have a third attack from, say, like Haste of your Oath of Vengeance or other, Polearm Mastery, whatever else you might have taken. So that's going to basically sum up my choices of spells for the Paladin. I want to talk about different types of builds. Now, obviously, I've mentioned a few times the defensive protector type build. And like I said, this is kind of like your frontline commander style where you're boosting and buffing your allies and taking damage for them. And things like Oath of Redemption, the Oath of Devotion, and the Oath of the Crown are all really strong in this role, especially the first two. Oath of the Crown is probably not quite as strong, but it's still alright. Oath of the Crown is like probably the closest to traditional like first edition Paladins, to be honest, which is probably why it's not as good. But anyways, it's going to be mostly concerned about defense and making yourself as hard to hit as possible, especially if you want redemption and you're going to be taking damage that your allies would have been taking instead. You don't want to be taking damage for yourself. You want to be as hard to hit as possible. Things like Shield of Faith are going to be good. If you went Dragonborn, not a bad choice, because now you can take resistance to a certain damage type. That's going to reduce the damage you're taking as well. It's just going to mean that you want to be as buffy as possible. You might even want to consider things like, say, the Tough feat, giving you an extra 2 hit points per level. You just want to be resilient. You want to absorb damage that they're taking. You're probably going to take the protection or the defense fighting style, giving you a +1 to your armor class. Go with the heaviest armor you can wear, the best armor you've got, use a shield, and just take those kind of feats and abilities that are going to make you as tanky as possible. And just try to absorb damage for them. One of my favorites, a more offensive style build, is the Polearm Paladin. Polearm Mastery is the key to this build. I even put Polearm Mastery ahead of things like, say, Great Weapon Mastery, which a lot of Paladins might be tempted to take, but I like Polearm Mastery better on the Paladin. And the reason is because of the improvement to your action economy. Polearm Mastery gives you a bonus action attack that you can make. It's with the butt end of the polearm. It only does 1d4 damage, so the damage isn't great. But it will get your strength bonus. It'll get any magic item bonuses. So if you had a +2 polearm, that's an extra +2. And you can still smite with it. But it also gives you the option of making a reaction attack when somebody comes within your reach for the first time. And don't forget that with the polearm, you have a 10-foot reach. So you can run up to an enemy, hit them twice with your attack, assuming you're level 5 or higher. use a bonus action attack, hit them again, and when somebody else comes into the fight, you could use your reaction to hit this guy. You could be pretty reliably making between 3 and 4 attacks a round as early as 5th level. And you could be dropping smites on pretty much all those attacks. It's also going to stack with your improved smite ability at level 11. That extra D8 damage is just going to be applied to all these hits. I really like the Polearm Master. You can start taking things like Great Weapon Mastery as well, and Sentinel, obviously. Those are both excellent options as well. I prefer Sentinel out of these two with this build if it was one or the other, just because unlike, say, a Barbarian who can recklessly attack and use that to overcome the -5 to hit penalty, or even say like a Battle Master where you could use precision attack or a trip attack to knock a guy prone and give you some advantage, you don't really have easy ways of getting advantage unless you take like Compelled Duel or something like that. So in those circumstances, Great Weapon Mastery is a lot better. But if you're just kind of playing, you know, any of the other ones, you don't have an easy access to advantage ability, then Great Weapon Mastery isn't quite as good. The thing to remember with the Paladin, compared to say like a fighter is just doing his damage through a lot of attacks, right? He makes up damage. He generally is going to do, you know, let's say even at level 20, you're using a +3 greatsword, we'll soon by then, and you've got 20 strength. The average damage on your greatsword is 7, +3 from your +3 sword is 10, plus your strength. The fighter is doing 15 damage per hit. So to go up to 25 is kind of a big jump for him, and it's maybe worth missing on one of his 4 attacks that he would have had at level 20. But for you, you're doing, with say, with a greatsword under the same circumstances, also 15 per hit. But you're not, because you're also getting that extra D8 from your improved smites. You might be adding smites to that, or you might be using like Crusader's Mantle or Divine Favor or other buffs to boost your damage up. And if you start averaging 20, 25 damage a hit, A, the +10 is making up less of the damage, so it doesn't contribute as much to your overall damage, but B, you can't really afford to miss because you're hitting so hard with each hit. Unlike the fighter, who's making up his damage through lots of hits, you're doing your damage in 2 hits, and you don't want to miss them. So I don't like it quite as much as on others, but like I said, there are circumstances. Sentinel, you're going to have an opportunity attack. It really shines when you have other frontline fighters with you, or other frontline combatants. So maybe you have a war cleric or a fighter or a barbarian. Somebody attacks them, you can use your reaction to make an opportunity attack against them, and now you're going to be able to add your Divine Favor or your improved Divine Smite damage to that, or Divine Favor if you had that, both, I guess. And you're going to reduce their movement speed to 0, which is pretty handy as well. Especially good when somebody's trying to run past you and get to your like 2nd rank allies, like the Ranger or the Wizard or the Sorcerer. Then you can make an opportunity attack. If it hits, their movement is reduced to 0, and they're just locked in place, ready for you to continue beating on them. That's the Polearm one. I kind of really like Variant Human on this, because then you get the bonus feat, and it's going to allow you to maybe start picking up things like Great Weapon Mastery and Sentinel and some of these other feats along the way as well. It's worth bearing in mind, though, that you're not a fighter. You're not going to have a bunch of extra feats. And unlike, say, a fighter who has really strength and then con to worry about, you have strength and charisma and con to worry about. You have more stats you need to be buffing, and you have less opportunities to buff them. So it's called MAD, Multiple Attribute Dependency. It could be a problem for you. If you start investing everything into feats, then you're just not going to have enough to like really take advantage of, say, your protection aura or high strength. But, you know, it can be done. But going Variant Human, that bonus feat is going to help out a lot in that regard. As for some multi-class builds, because I love multi-classing, as you've probably realized by now, one of them I really like is kind of the Crit Fisher Paladin. And this is just going to be a Paladin multi-classed, probably with, I'm going to say, Champion Fighter is probably your best option. But you could go Barbarian as well. Barbarian is going to give you reckless attack, so you'll be able to roll with advantage, and that's going to help you to land more crits, and then use those for smites, and double up all that smite damage. The nice thing about Barbarian is it's only a 2-level investment. That's all you're going to need. And that means you'll still be able to get to level 17 and get your 5th level spells, and level 18 and get your 30-foot aura. The problem with Barbarian is it's not really compatible with heavy armor if you want to rage. And if you want to start pumping up your dex, then that's another stat you've got to start worrying about if you want to use unarmored defense. Your constitution on a paladin is usually like your 3rd priority after strength and charisma. So your armor class isn't really going to be competitive with like an actual barbarian. You're also not going to have as many hit points for the most part because you're going to have a D10 instead of a D12. It's not a big difference at low levels, but it starts to add up over time. And if you wear heavy armor, your 1st level of barbarian is really just a wasted level. So your other option is champion fighter. This is the one I like better. Level 1 fighter is going to give you a bonus action heal, so if you're in dire straits, instead of using your lay hands on yourself and using an action, you can just bonus action yourself. It's also great when you're going to take a rest, because if you haven't used it yet, you just take your bonus action heal, rest, you got it back again on a short rest. And it'll save you from having to use as many hit dice, it'll save from your lay hands, it'll save you from having to cast spells, heaven forbid you actually cast a spell as a paladin. You know, we don't want to do that. So it's pretty good there. Level 2 is going to give you Action Surge, of course, one of the most amazing abilities in the game, especially for a level 2 ability. It's ridiculous. Level 3 will give you a Champion Fighter archetype, just passively doubling your crit chance. And if you stop at level 3, that'll still give you 5th level Paladin spells. If you are more concerned with, say, getting an extra feat, like, say, for example, you wanted to go with the Polearm build, then you might want to go 4 fighter, still get that extra feat. And, you know, that'll allow you to keep picking up some more stuff. It's going to be mostly Paladin-focused build. You're really just dipping a bit of Barbarian or Fighter just for the improved chance of landing crits, and then using those crits to use your smites with to just maximize the damage you can do with that. Next is a build I've alluded to other times, and that's the Hexadin. You just need 1 or 2 levels of Hex Warlock, and then you can use your Charisma instead of your Strength. Now, it's worth noting, I'd actually forgotten about this, it was just when I was prepping for this video. If you want to multi-class as a Paladin, you still need 13 Strength and 13 Charisma. So you can't just dump Strength and say, I don't need it because I'm just going to use my Charisma. Warlock will let you use your Charisma to attack with, but you still need Strength to multi-class in and out, and you'll need Strength for your armor. And since you need 13 just to multi-class, you might as well still take 15 to allow yourself to wear heavy armor without movement speed penalties, which means that it's not as big a benefit as it might have been. You're not dumping as much strength as you might have liked. There's a lot of variations on this. If you wanted to go most of Paladin, you could literally just take 1 level of Warlock, and there you go. You've got your ability to use your Charisma instead of your Strength. You can only use it, though, on a one-handed weapon, unless you go up to level 3 and take the Blade Warlock, Pact of the Blade. So, you know, if you're not doing that, then you're stuck with one-handed weapons, which isn't necessarily bad. The nice thing about it is it helps to reduce some of that attribute dependency I talked about before, because you can just leave your strength at 15 and max your charisma, which is going to affect your spells, and it's, you know, going to affect your saving throws and now your attack and damage. So it's kind of just a 1-level dip to basically cure a lot of your ills. Not physical ills, because you're going to be immune to disease at level 3, but, you know, other ills. Other variations, if you want to have ranged attacks, you might want to go higher as a warlock to pick up things like Eldritch Blast. You can pick up a bunch of evocations or invocations with it, like obviously Agonizing Blast, but you might want to consider Grasp of Hadar to help you pull enemies in closer towards you. Other variations, though, are heavy on the warlock, and I'm going to make a video discussing some of those in the future, so we won't go over it with a lot of detail, but 6 or 7 levels of Paladin will give you your Oath of, or your Aura of Protection, sorry, oath spells of whatever oath you decide to choose. It'll give you, say, Oath of Warding if you went, or Oath of the Ancients. Sorry, I'm getting all the words confused here. And it'll still give you a lot of high-level Warlock spells. It can be pretty nice because you can also add things like Shield. And the way that your pact spells and your Paladin spells interact is that they're actually kept separate, because the pact spells are charged on a short rest and your Paladin are on a long rest. Now, I mentioned this in the Hexblade video, but Hexblades have option of taking Shield as a first level spell, which is a terrible option if you're just going to go straight Hexblade, because your pact spells scale up automatically, and while Shield is a phenomenal first level spell, it's a terrible 5th level spell. But if you combine Paladin, you can now use Shield with your Paladin spell slots, meaning you can cast it as a first level spell still. And it's going to make you even more tanky than you already were. Better yet, you can now use your Warlock spell slots to smite with, and those will recharge on a short rest. Now, you're only going to have 2 or 3 of them a day probably, or 2 or 3 of them per rest, sorry. But that's 2 or 3 spell slots that you can just be dropping and recharging on a short rest, drop them again. If you have a couple of rests a day, then you can be smiting a lot. You're also going to be able to still use your Paladin spell slots for smiting, of course. And it'll give you access to some pretty decent Warlock spells, like, say, Armor of Agathis, or other things of that nature. It's pretty phenomenal. Either way, if you go mostly Paladin and just want to dip Warlock just for, maybe you just take Eldritch Blast, even without agonizing, just to give yourself a range option. You don't have to use it very often, but when you can't get into combat, you at least have something you can fall back on. And the other way, where you go mostly Warlock and just take Paladin to help you have better armor, use some smites, then that's great as well. The other thing worth noting is that Warlocks also have Eldritch Smite, and those can stack, so you could use your Paladin Smite plus an Eldritch Smite is now going to use 2 of your spell slots, but like I said, go hard or go home. Right? The last one I'm going to cover is actually a character that I'm playing in our current Dungeon and Mad Mage campaign, which is generally known as the Sorcadin, although I prefer the Paladorcerer. And basically, you're going to take Sorcerer combined with Paladin. I'm going to make an entire video just talking about this at some point, once I've leveled this guy up more. We're only level 7 right now, and I'd like to have a lot more like mid and high level experience so I can see how the class really fits together. But so far, I've been quite happy with it. The basic idea with Sorcadin or the Paladorcerer is you're going to take a bunch of Paladin levels, get yourself up to level 6 or 7, get your Aura of Protection, and whatever, if you wanted to go to 7. Oath of the Ancients, you almost always want to go to 7, by the way, because that Aura is so good. But let's say you didn't, you stop at level 6, get Aura of Protection, and then you're mostly going to invest into Sorcerer. The reason for this is because you'll actually end up with way more spell slots than you would as just a pure Paladin. You'll also have higher level spell slots available. And you have access to meta magic. Meta magic changes the game for melee casters. It really does. Because now you can take something like Quicken Spell. When I said before that Bless is great, but it takes your action, well, why not Quicken? Cast it as a bonus action, and now in that first round of combat, you can get the benefits from it. Maybe you went like, say, Oath of Vengeance, and you have Haste on your spell list. You can Quicken cast Haste, or you can take it as a Sorcerer, actually. Either way, you could have Haste. You Quicken cast Haste, and now you're getting that benefit in the first round. When you think about the way Haste works, let's say you only had 2 attacks around. You're level 5 plus Paladin, you got 2 attacks. You cast Haste in that first round. You sacrificed your first 2 attacks for Haste. So you're down 2 attacks, and you're down a 3rd level spell slot. You've done no damage. That's not necessarily bad. The extra movement and the extra armor class might be really important. Maybe you were going to have to dash this round anyways, but now you're like, I can cast Haste and use my normal movement and still get into the combat. I won't be able to attack, but I wasn't going to do it anyways. It can still be good, but bear with me. So Hasted, you've had 0 attacks in 1 round, versus 2, and you still have a third level spell. That could have gone to a Smite, for example. The second round, you get your extra attack, so now you have 3. But the other way, you would have had your regular 2, bringing you to a total of 4 attacks through 2 rounds, versus only 3, and you're still up a third level spell. The next round, you get your 3, you would have had 2, you're at 6 and 6, you're still up a third level spell though on this side, which means that haste takes at least 4 rounds for you to start actually seeing the benefit. Now, if it's a long fight, that might be great, but generally, a lot of fights are only going to go 3, 4, 5 rounds. And damage at the beginning of the fight is usually more important than damage at the end of the fight. If you're fighting 15 guys, you really just want to get a few of these guys down as fast as possible and reduce the number of incoming attacks that you have to deal with. Attacking later and later and later in the fight doesn't help you to do that. But with Quicken, you could cast haste as a bonus action, and now in that first round of combat, you're already getting the extra attack from Smite. It's a complete game changer. The other thing is, besides having more spell slots and having access to meta magic, you can also melt down your spell slots and trade them for sorcery points, which you can then convert into more spell slots. So while you'll have, anytime you multi-class, you're going to end up having, between different casting types, that is, you're going to have spell slots higher than what you can actually cast. So let's say you're a 6th level paladin, you're treated as 3rd level for casting purposes because you're a half caster, and let's say you're a 11th level sorcerer. So you have 11 full sorcerer levels, that's 11 casting levels, 3 from your 6 levels of paladin, that makes you a 14th level caster. So you actually have access to 7th level spells. Or you would if you were a full caster. Because you're only 11th level, you have access to 6th level spells, but you have 7th level spell slots. The next level, at level 12 sorcerer, you'd still only have access to 6th level spells, but you'll have an 8th level spell slot. So while you could always upcast stuff, there's nothing wrong with that, you could also decide, I'm going to use a bunch of my low level spell slots to smite with, and then I'm going to convert my 7th or 8th level spell slot that I can't cast any spells from that level anyways, convert it to sorcery points, and then convert the sorcery points back into a bunch of low-level spell slots to replenish all the smites I've used. It just gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility, and you can do some really crazy cool things with it. So anyways, that's basically everything I have for the Paladin. Like I said before, Paladins have been around forever. They're a lot of fun. They're very thematically cool and interesting, and they're a fun class to roleplay because just being that guy with a higher calling or a higher purpose can give your character a sense of direction and purpose that makes the game a lot more enjoyable. Instead of just being like, level 8 and still deciding, I'm still trying to find who I am, You kind of know that I'm a Paladin, this is my oath, this is what I'm committed to, this is the kind of stuff I want my character to be about. And whether it's a good Paladin, a neutral Paladin, or an evil Paladin, at least having a goal will make the character much more fulfilling and fun to play. So hopefully this guide gave you some ideas of what's possible with Paladins. I'm sure you'll probably have a ton of your own ideas. If you do, please leave stuff in the comments section. I promise to read every comment. And feel free to like the video if you like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that stuff. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the dungeon. Bye.